welcome to Talent Hub Talk. I am Ben Duncan, and this is a place where prominent and inspirational figures from both the local ANZ and global Salesforce Ohana share their stories. Hello, and welcome back to Talent Hub Talk. Today it's just myself, Ben. Hope everyone has had a good start to 2023, and really the purpose of this episode is just to really summarize what we've seen in the first quarter of 2023 and provide kind of an update to the podcast we released early in January, where in January, where I kind of summarized what I was expecting to see in early 2023 and see how much of that has kind of come to fruition and how the market is shaping up, especially in Australia and also a little bit on New Zealand as well. So I think it's important to get off to starting with the news that we heard in January from Salesforce, in that they were expecting they were rolling off around 10% of their workforce across the world, which definitely did impact some people in this region. So we have seen a number of people that have been finishing up or are due to finish up with Salesforce in both Australia and New Zealand. I would say that most of the affected roles, most of the affected people were in sales or customer success, or marketing or those areas, not so much in professional services, although we have seen some people that have been impacted in the professional services space, predominantly from an acquisition that Salesforce made, I think it was last year, and some of the people that came through that acquisition have unfortunately been affected and have been let go or are finishing up soon with Salesforce. So that was the big news that we saw early in January, and I guess that did impact the market. In January, we definitely saw January being a quieter month in terms of vacancies and movement, and that isn't abnormal for January, especially in Australia with Australia Day, school holidays, things like that. Often there is quite a lot of people that aren't working in January. They tend to take longer holidays, so things sometimes are a little bit quieter in terms of hiring decisions being made. Doesn't mean you can't find a job in January. It just means that sometimes things get dragged on a little bit, and some of the pointy decisions aren't made until late Jan or early Feb. So we definitely did see January being a slower month compared to what we've seen in Feb and March. We also saw a few other companies letting Salesforce professionals go from their team, not just targeting specifically Salesforce people, but obviously Salesforce employees were caught up in some layoffs across industries, including fintech, some finance, education, and also some other consulting companies. So definitely have been a number of people impacted by layoffs in the Salesforce ecosystem, not just at Salesforce, but other companies in Australia and New Zealand in the early part of this year. We have spoken and seen a number of Salesforce partners still talking about growth and looking to increase their headcount. But I think across the board, we've definitely seen, I would say, a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of, people slowing down, making decisions. Some consulting companies are now waiting to have projects approved, signed off, ready to start before they're hiring for their teams. Whereas in 2021, 2022, we were seeing companies hiring en masse ahead of time with the potential of winning projects. So that's kind of slowed down this year. And although we are, like I said, seeing some partners that are still talking about some big growth this year, we're seeing probably more across the board, people stabilizing and looking to get everyone that they've got in their team out on projects and going a lot slower with their growth plans. So that's what I would say is the typical stance from a lot of partners at the moment, hiring when they have a really defined requirement, and that's probably a good thing the way the market is, rather than hiring in the expectation that a project will come up. Unfortunately, I'm recording this in kind of mid-March, and news broke last week of Xero making redundancies. So that was probably the the biggest headline that we've seen in ANZ since the Salesforce layoffs in terms of that impacting tech staff in ANZ. So Xero have let go of a large number of employees, and that will be both across Australia and New Zealand. I'm yet to see how much and how significantly that impacts the Salesforce headcount there. I'm guessing probably likely that some people will be caught up in that, but we haven't seen that yet in terms of people reaching out or people that are now looking for new employment having left Xero. But yeah, that's obviously big news. It's news like that has an impact on the market in terms of how other people are feeling. So when that news broke, we were having conversations with other hiring managers from other companies that then expect to see more talent on the market. So yeah, I think when big companies lay off tech staff, everyone starts to think that there's going to be more and more Salesforce talent on the market, and that doesn't necessarily always eventuate. It doesn't always mean that there's now an abundance of people looking for work, and we're not really seeing that yet. We'll soon be releasing our Salesforce survey for the year, and some of the stats that will show in there are really interesting and a really good comparison to what we've seen over the last couple of years. But yeah, we're not seeing like a mass number of Salesforce talent just sitting around looking for work still. We are seeing more people coming onto the market, but it's definitely not a case of lots and lots of people struggling to find work right now. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the year pans out. Time to hire has definitely increased, so interview processes are taking longer. There are probably more rounds for most companies, or more time between rounds, where they're looking to make sure that they're hiring the very best person for their requirement and not just hiring the first person that's suitable for their requirement. So we're getting a lot of customers that historically might have been happy to see one or two CVs and make a decision based on two people, whereas now they're looking for 3-4 CVs and make a comparison on a bigger group of potential candidates. So and I think that really flows down from where companies where there's press around companies letting people go. The perception is there are more talented people in the market. So we are definitely seeing companies kind of drag their heels a little bit more, take more time with hiring and making sure that they're getting a good selection of different profiles before making a decision. We're definitely seeing more applicants per vacancy. So if you look on LinkedIn, you can see when a job is posted, you can see how many other applicants there are. We're definitely seeing the applicant numbers going up, but in the back end, we're also seeing that a lot of the applicants aren't suitable for the roles they're applying for. So lots of people that aren't even in the Salesforce ecosystem are applying for Salesforce roles, and people that have never probably even been on Trailhead before are applying for Salesforce roles. And I think that's just because more people are unfortunately unemployed in different areas outside of Salesforce than there have been over the last few years. They're probably throwing their net further and wider than they would have in the past, and applying for roles that they don't always meet the requirements for, or probably aren't even that keen on doing. It's just a volumes game. So yeah, don't be put off if you're looking at a LinkedIn role and you're seeing that there might be 50, 60, 100 applicants before you, because not all of these applicants are going to be right for the role. Interestingly, we are still seeing candidates being counter-offered. So although there's obviously not as many vacancies in the market as there have been over the last couple of years, and not as many companies actively hiring, and some people obviously laying off staff, we are seeing a lot of companies are still keen to retain and make sure they're keeping their best talent. Therefore, counter offers are definitely still happening, and I expect that will continue to happen for any highly valued member of staff in a company. And if the company aren't going through a downturn themselves, they'll be looking to retain their best talent. So if you are looking at new roles and looking to leave your current role, you probably can expect some sort of counter offer when you do leave your role. We're still seeing multiple offer situations for certain skill sets. So we've seen candidates get multiple offers if they're developers, admins, functional consultants. So people are still interviewing for multiple roles, being offered multiple roles, and having to make a decision based on a variety of factors. So yeah, there's definitely still opportunities out there for people. Interestingly, I've found over the last couple of months that working with candidates that are immediately available and people that are potentially might have been impacted by redundancies with their previous company, um, they're interviewing with lots of different companies and sometimes getting multiple offers. But sometimes some of these offers are coming after they've already started in a new role, which makes it really difficult for them, obviously, because sometimes these offers might be, more money than the role they've just recently secured, or might be a better suited role for them in their eyes. The one thing I would say about this is, if you are signing a contract and starting in a new role, make sure it's something that you're committed to, and the role that you're happy to stay in. If you're not 100% committed to that role, and if you're not sure on the role, rather than signing a contract and starting, I'd speak to the employer about, maybe delaying your decision, maybe explaining that you're considering a few different things and you want to be sure of your decision before you commit. And just buying yourself a bit more time to consider all of the different options on the table, because it really does make an impact on a company if you start and then eventually decide to leave quite quickly. Some of the impact could be that they've declined other candidates that were potentially suitable for the role as well when they chose to hire you. And then those other candidates that were declined have then gone on to find other roles, which means the company's back at square one with their recruitment process. It might mean that projects are delayed. Obviously, there's some costs involved, like getting your system set up and your computer and things like that. And ultimately, it just leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth. It's I guess on the flip side, if you imagine you start in a role on day one, in the first week, and the company turn around to you and say, actually, you know what, a better candidate's come onto the market and we're going to hire them instead and let you go, that wouldn't feel great to you. So if you imagine that's kind of the equivalent that you're doing that to the company in reverse. And I appreciate everyone needs to look after themselves and their long-term career aspirations and goals. But I think it's really important not to muck anyone around. So it's better to be honest and say that, I'm considering multiple offers. Therefore, rather than signing this contract, I just want to finalize the process with the other roles. Or before I start in this role, I just want to conclude a few interviews, just because I don't want to mess anyone around. I think that's definitely the right way to go about things. So yeah, just my advice and my insight on that. We are seeing more companies looking for the hybrid model. More companies are looking to get people back into the office at least a couple of times a week. This year, we have placed a couple of fully remote roles with certain companies, but on the whole, I would say more and more companies are looking for some physical presence in an office, whether that's one or two or more times per week. And really, we are seeing that candidates are preferring to have at least a base that they can go to occasionally. Again, maybe one or two times a week. Obviously, there are some people that prefer remote roles, but I would say on the whole, we are seeing that the kind of average of both company and candidate wanting to have some presence in an office weekly at least. Salaries are fairly stable, I would say, including daily rates. We haven't really seen them rise over the last 6 or so months, I would say. Towards the back end of last year, they kind of peaked, and we've not really seen people, getting 20-30% pay rises that potentially they were getting last year and the year before. We're seeing some people move for the same money, seeing some people take a little bit of a backward step when they've been impacted by layoffs and then secured another role quite quickly, but a slightly lower salary. And we're seeing daily rates pretty flat in terms of not necessarily any growth over the last year or so. As an example, senior developers probably earning the same or similar to what they were earning a year ago at the real peak of demand through the COVID period. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of evolves over the next 12 or so months. I think the salaries are really healthy still in the market, but I don't think there's a huge amount of growth on the cards in a lot of the Salesforce skill sets. Interestingly, we haven't seen a huge number of contract requirements compared to what we were seeing a couple of years ago or even last year. And we have seen some contractors that have decided to go into permanent roles because they weren't finding the right contract role or the right volume of contract roles within their area of expertise. And at the beginning of the year, we weren't really seeing that. We were seeing people holding out for contracts, whereas now we are seeing people that are being more open to taking on a permanent role. But when they are looking to move from a contract to a permanent role, they are often looking for something that they're not getting in a contract. So career growth, training and learning and development opportunities. So obviously they're taking a bit of a hit on the earnings, because a daily rate typically will pay more than a salary. But they're looking to gain things from their employer that they wouldn't typically get in a contract role. So we are seeing more people make that switch, but looking for a trade-off to kind of supplement the loss of earnings. February and March have been busier months than January for sure. So it shows there are still jobs out there, still opportunities. We're still seeing companies hiring, and yeah, I don't expect that will necessarily change too much over the next couple of months. But obviously, we have to be aware of the economy, the global economy, and what's happening in different locations. And yeah, let's keep an eye on that, and I'll keep updates coming. But as it stands, if you are looking for a Salesforce opportunity, or you're looking to hire into your team, obviously we would love to help, love to offer any advice that we can. And yeah, always here to bounce ideas off of each other, and help with any recruitment related topics or career related goals and aspirations. So feel free to reach out anytime, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the chat, and if you did, please make sure you have subscribed for future episodes that are coming through. I would also be very grateful if you would consider leaving a review on your chosen podcast platform, as 5-star reviews will help us to reach more trailblazers from across the world. I look forward to sharing another episode with you soon, and thanks again.